Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Smart Naruto Got Harem with Haku Anko and Femme Kyuubi, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. -6 years after the Kyuubi's attack, inside an office. A figure sat at his desk, before flipping open a multi-page report. October 10, Naruto's age. 1. Many children come about unique in appearance, especially in a shinobi village. In Konoha, no toddler was more telling of this fact than Naruto Uzumaki, son of Konoha's late 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, a man known to outsiders as the Yellow Flash, while known locally as the man who followed in Orochimaru's footsteps, and the Hokage who proposed a eugenics program as a solution to the shortage of skilled shinobi. When it comes to appearance, there are several glaring abnormalities concerning Naruto's appearance. He was a tiny child, one who had short, spiky blonde hair covering his scalp, that much was normal. Curiously, however, Naruto had several features. Unique to himself. He possessed a set of whisker-like markings on each cheek, likely attributed to Naruto's housing of the Kyuubi within himself. Besides that, Naruto possessed fang-like canine teeth, with a pair of slightly longer ears, most likely due to Minato's constant experimentations upon himself. While not affecting his anatomy, the foreign blood and genetic code would likely have passed down through the two's shared blood. One could only wonder, behind those closed eyes, what was this blonde toddler thinking? October 10, Naruto's age. 3. Naruto is developing well. He has grown up to be physically healthy and can comprehend certain books. Worryingly, however, he has yet to speak. While running across a field, Naruto reportedly fell a considerable height, before standing up again and continuing his run. On a visit to the hospital, an extraordinary discovery was made. Naruto's bones were far from normal, with them being at least 5 times as dense as the bones of others his age, while the bones themselves still retained the same weight. When questioned about how he felt, Naruto persisted in his refusal to speak. October 10, Naruto's age. 5. It's Naruto's 5th birthday today, as well as his 2nd year in the orphanage. It was reported that he remains silent when he isn't required to speak. Besides his social situation, Naruto has shown great interest in the subjects of biology, chemistry, physics, and history, and has shown great intelligence despite his closed-off nature. In all regards, it is best for us all for Naruto to not develop into the kind of person his father had once been. The figure closed the book, before placing it on the desk. He looked out of the window, taking account of the downpour which had just begun, before standing up to leave his office, smoking through his pipe as he shut the door behind him. October 10, 6 years after the Kyuubi's attack. As the great rainfall continued outside his window, Naruto sat at his desk as he flipped through a thick book regarding the anatomies of several animals, reading each page with intense focus. Before he had been able to continue reading through the book, Naruto had been able to hear several footsteps as they creaked up the wooden staircase of the orphanage. "Is this his room?" an old, gruff voice said from the other side of the door to his room. "It is," came the voice of the matron of the orphanage. The rain came to a halt, as the door slowly opened from the outside, before both the matron and the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, walked into the room. "Could you leave the two of us alone?" Hiruzen requested. "Of course, Hokage-sama," the matron replied. "Be aware, however, that he does not respond via speech often." The matron walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. Hiruzen walked towards Naruto's desk, before greeting the boy. "Hello, I assume your name is Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto did not answer, as he flipped a page in his book, scribbling notes in his notebook throughout. "May I have a look?" Hiruzen requested, giving a soft smile. Showing slight bits of hesitation, Naruto cleared his throat, before finally speaking up. "My apologies, Hokage-sama, but could I finish writing my idea first?" "Of course," Naruto. Take your time, Hiruzen assured. He clearly keeps to himself, and only speaks when he needs to. Minutes later, Naruto passed the notebook to Hiruzen, who curiously flipped through the pages. Incredible, Hiruzen mentally remarked as he fell into a slight trance in sheer amazement, clearly impressed by Naruto's writings. Before long, a certain page caught his eye. Hiruzen tapped Naruto's shoulder, causing the blonde to turn around. Did you come up with this? Hiruzen asked, pointing at several chemical formulas. I did, Naruto replied, clearly not particularly comfortable with speaking. He's gonna think I'm weird, just like how the kids and the caretakers think I am, isn't he? This is brilliant, Hiruzen declared, shocking Naruto. You should continue developing this one, you might just come up with a massive breakthrough. Naruto said nothing, continuing to read through his book. Why do you have such a fascination with science? Hiruzen questioned. As if reading from the book itself, Naruto formulated his answer. The purpose of science is to explain and understand the natural world. The purpose of biology is to understand the nature of all living things. The purpose of chemistry is for one to understand how the elements of the periodic table react with each other and the properties of the compounds, Naruto began to say, only for Hiruzen to cut him off. That's the book's explanation, what's yours? Hiruzen asked. 2. Become better. Naruto rhetorically asked. It's more of me being inspired by a singular person. A singular entity. And that person is? Hiruzen asked. The fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, Naruto replied, all to Hiruzen's dismay. Most of all, I was inspired by his studies into chemistry. Not good, Hiruzen thought, before turning to Naruto, who faced his book throughout the entire conversation. Do you know of his more unethical ideas? Unethical? That's up to debate, but yes, I do know of his eugenics project, Naruto replied. It was most fascinating, albeit, it does sound rather bland. The systemic breeding of the best people would eliminate everything unique about humanity. Something's wrong, Hiruzen thought. Most kids his age don't just sit alone in their room, completely closed off to the world. He reminds me of. Hiruzen walked to the side of Naruto's desk, before looking at Naruto's face. Hiruzen's eyes widened. He saw it, he saw him. Naruto looked up at Hiruzen, whose eyes saw something different. Behind that pair of lifeless eyes, and emotionless facial expression, Hiruzen could see the specter of Orochimaru hanging behind Naruto, one that had haunted him for the last 20 years of his life. Naruto, do you like living here? Hiruzen asked. Naruto looked at the old man for a few seconds, before turning back to his book. None one here appreciates me for who I am. The kids my age always push me around, they call me a freak, they say I'm destined to be alone, the best ones are indifferent to me. When the boys kick me or punch me, or even beat me over the head with sticks and pipes, the matrons do nothing. The wounds heal all the same, yes, but what changes? Hiruzen's features darkened, before standing up to leave. Excuse me for a moment, Naruto, I'll be back in a moment. Hokage-sama, Naruto spoke up, I need to get something from downstairs. Without waiting for Hiruzen's reply, Naruto left the room, before running down the stairs and towards a closed door. Cautiously, Naruto opened the door before walking into the room. Before he was able to take any further steps, a thunderous crack could be heard as a lead pipe was brought down on the back of Naruto's head, knocking him to the ground. Knew he would be here today. A boy said, kicking the downed Naruto in the face, causing the blonde to cough up blood. How's it going, freak? Another boy asked, bringing his pipe down over Naruto's back. Still refused to talk. Naruto remained silent, not even bothering to get to his feet. Don't worry, the first boy stated, withdrawing a knife, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. We'll see if this makes you click. Before Naruto was able to do anything, the second boy smashed his pipe into Naruto's head, knocking him unconscious. Naruto's mindscape, pain. That was all he felt. Naruto felt himself lying in a pool of something, a liquid. Is this my blood? Naruto thought, placing his hand on the ground, before lifting it into view. It's transparent. Naruto looked around, before noticing the change in his environment. Instead of him lying in a pool of blood within a dingy room in the old and decrepit orphanage, Naruto now found himself in a sewer-like environment, one which had large cage-like bars in front of him. No longer feeling the pain of the attack, Naruto slowly crawled to his feet, before approaching the large metal bars. What is this? Naruto asked himself. It's as if something was meant to be contained here. As if on cue, a large shadow approached the cage, before lunging into view, slamming its large claws into the bars, surprising Naruto. The Kyuubi showed its face, revealing its ferocious, red eyes, before roaring at Naruto. The Kyuubi fell silent, slightly confused at Naruto's unflinching nature. Fascinating, Naruto thought, looking at the large beast, who returned his stare. Finally, my jailer comes to meet me. The Kyuubi began to say, to what do I owe this honor? Jailer. Naruto asked back, barely any emotion in his voice. I know nothing of that part. But as to why I'm here, I guess an attempt on my life is to blame. The Kyuubi's eyes widened, before leaning in closer to Naruto. Do you not fear me? What's there to fear? Naruto asked back, if anything. I find myself more comfortable conversing with you. You are one of few beings that I've held a conversation with for this length of time. The Kyuubi blinked. Does this form not terrify you? It does not in the slightest, although. Naruto began to reply, it does feel unnatural to speak to a large fox. In that case, you must promise me to never tell anyone of this form of mine. The Kyuubi requested, is that alright? Would that make you feel more comfortable? Naruto nodded before the Kyuubi vanished into a cloud of white smoke. The smoke cleared after a few seconds, just as Naruto laid eyes on the far smaller figure that stood before him. Standing before him was no longer the Kyuubi, but a young woman dressed in a loose red kimono, a kimono which barely obscured her gorgeous figure. The woman possessed long, black hair, while still retaining the characteristic 9 tails flowing behind her. Are you usually this quiet? The Kyuubi asked, this time in a rather feminine voice. I don't enjoy talking. Naruto began, I'd much rather spend time alone, reading books regarding science. Are you currently wondering why you're here now? The Kyuubi asked once more. In regards to historical precedents, I assume you're currently sealed within me, Naruto replied, and judging from the types of attacks I had suffered earlier. I'm currently unconscious, hence why I'm talking to you. More specifically speaking, we're currently inside your mindscape, the Kyuubi explained, although, you're not just unconscious right now. You're near death. Naruto's eyes widened, clearly alarmed by this information, and the Kyuubi could sense it too. This feeling, what is it? Naruto questioned. I feel my heart beating as if I had just run 5 marathons, I feel myself sweating more, my stomach has a strange sensation, I'm breathing quicker. This, Naruto-kun, is fear, the Kyuubi stated, you're scared, terrified, frightened, all at the prospect of your life coming to an end. The Kyuubi explained, but one has to imagine. Has Naruto-kun never felt fear before this? Fear? What is that? Naruto asked. Is it like how I don't like some of the boys in the orphanage? Now's not the time. The Kyuubi suddenly snapped. You see that seal there? The Kyuubi questioned, pointing towards a paper seal. Do I tear the entire thing off? Naruto asked. No. The Kyuubi roared, it will kill you. Just tear a small bit off. Hesitating, Naruto nodded, before walking towards the seal. With a firm ripping noise, Naruto tore a tiny piece of the seal off, a piece tinier than his thumb. That'll only get you so far, the Kyuubi stated, you won't heal just from that. I won't, but it will keep me alive, Naruto suddenly stated, cutting off the Kyuubi. I want answers, mainly. What's wrong with me? What? The Kyuubi asked in confusion. With my anatomy, it is not normal for any person, let alone a boy, to be hit many times over the head by a lead pipe, yet remain alive. Any normal person would have suffered concussions or broken bones at that point, Naruto explained. I want to know why. The Kyuubi said nothing at first, clearly hesitating. Please, Naruto pleaded, I just want to know. There is no easy answer for this, the Kyuubi explained. You want the good part first or the bad part? Give me the bad part first, Naruto requested. Your blood is tainted, Naruto-kun, the Kyuubi began to say. It is impure, and it is diluted. Your veins do not just course with your parents' blood. Your veins are coursed by the blood of many family lines, many bloodlines, if you will. Naruto paused, attempting to wrap his brain around the newly received information. Who are my parents? That's the good part, or well, the worst part, depending on how you see it. The Kyuubi explained, you possess a legendary lineage. One that promises great power and longevity. But one that might cause you great pain, great suffering, a great sense of guilt. Guilt towards something you never did. Who are my parents? Naruto asked once more. Your mother was a good woman, a kind woman. She was my former hostess. A truly loving person. The Kyuubi continued to explain. She possessed chilly red hair and was known to the shinobi world as the Kyuubi attempted to be continued, only to be cut off by an irate Naruto. Enough! Naruto yelled out in rage, before immediately composing himself, and falling to his knees, with tears streaming down his face. Please, just tell me, who were my parents? Perhaps, came the loving voice of a woman, as Naruto felt a comforting hand being placed on his shoulder. Naruto looked up, before facing a red-headed woman with violet-colored eyes. Perhaps I can provide a satisfactory answer. Masuko. Kushina. The Kyuubi muttered, her voice trembling and cracking, as drops of tears fell to the ground. Without further speech, Naruto jumped up, before hugging Kushina's feet. Kushina smiled, before ruffling Naruto's hair, as she felt her blouse slowly becoming wet. Kushina broke up Naruto's tight grip over her legs, before crouching down to his level, cupping his face with her right hand. Naruto. Kushina began to say, looking at Naruto's teeth and gently touching the blonde's long ears. What has Minato done to you? Minato. Naruto questioned, the fourth Hokage. The yellow flash. The butcher. Yes, he was your father, Kushina explained, a man who constantly drew the line between insanity and genius. Some of the things he did. There was no question that they were terrible, but his actions and ideas did stem from a good heart, albeit one that had cracked under the scars of war. Is that his justification, or is it his defense? Naruto questioned. It's neither, it's my attempted explanation, Kushina explained, as her left arm began to disperse. Ka-san, what's happening? Naruto asked, secretly already understanding what is happening, a tear slipping from the edge of his pupil. I don't have much longer left. Kushina stated, I'm sorry, Naruto, I'm sorry for the genetic situation you were born into, I'm sorry for the great burden you have inherited. I'm sorry for all the beatings you have suffered because of that burden. I'm sorry, truly sorry, for not being there for you when you needed it the most. Kushina touched Naruto's face one last time, before turning around. There's nothing wrong if you stay closed off like this, but there are times where you just won't be able to do things alone. You must learn to trust, to befriend, to love. Naruto began to fully tear up, his feeble attempts to stop the tears all failing. You are the last son of two families, while still holding the blood of many other bloodlines. Kushina explained, her lower half fading from sight. I will not urge you to do anything you don't want to. But I do hope you marry someone eventually, who knows? Maybe you'll charm more than one. Perhaps. You might even be able to tame the great Kyuubi. Hey, the Kyuubi protested, blushing furiously. If it means anything, Kurama. Take care of Naruto, train him in the shinobi ways. And prepare him for this cruel and violent world. Kushina stated. Naruto, please, restore the legacy of the Uzumaki name. Carry on your scientific studies. and punish the man who tore our family apart. As your mother, those are my final requests. Naruto stood up, before giving a slight smile, one that he rarely bore before this. I'm happy, glad, grateful, to be your son. Naruto stated, I always will be. Kushina smiled before fading from sight, leaving Naruto and Kurama alone in the blonde's mindscape. She was a loving woman, even to her last moments. Kurama explained, Naruto-kun, do your best to honor her memory. Could I ever accomplish that? Can I fill the shoes she left behind? Naruto questioned. I believe in you, Kurama stated, giving the surprised blonde a foxy grin. That was the first time that anyone said that, Naruto revealed, thank you, Kurama-chan. Slightly blushing due to the suffix applied to her by Naruto, Kurama stammered in her speech. No problem, Naruto-kun, it's time to go. The old man is expecting. Real world. Naruto awoke in a jolt, finding himself in a hospital room with a breathing apparatus placed over his face. Naruto slowly turned his head, noticing a sleeping Hiruzen sitting next to his bed. Did he, Hokage-sama, sit by my side all this time? Naruto thought, his eyes welling up before he tugged the Hokage's cloak. Does he care that much about me? Hiruzen slowly awoke, his weary eyes opening slowly as Naruto removed his breathing apparatus. Naruto, you're awake, Hiruzen exclaimed, are you alright? I'm fine, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied softly, could we talk in private? Of course, Hiruzen assured, giving a hand gesture before the Anbu guarding the room walked out the door. Why did no one tell me? Naruto asked. I hoped it wouldn't come to this. Hiruzen thought, before sighing and giving an answer. Naruto, please try to understand. Your parents had many enemies. And you knew how the public felt about your father. What do you think would happen, if everyone knew that you were his son? How did you know I was talking in regards to my parents? Naruto asked. In your slumber, you had glowed with an orange gleam. The same shade as the Kyuubi's chakra. Hiruzen explained, I suppose the Kyuubi told you about your heritage. Yes. Naruto murmured. What do you intend to do with this information? Hiruzen asked, curious in regards to the boy's answer. I'll become a shinobi, Naruto concluded, I'll continue studying science. And I'll be better than my father. Hiruzen smiled, before patting the boy on the head. Hiruzen pointed to a bag. I've packed your things, and I've got you an apartment to yourself, Hiruzen stated, it has everything a normal apartment would. As well as your laboratory. Naruto's eyes widened before he leapt up to hug the Hokage. Get some rest, Naruto, Hiruzen stated, setting the boy on the hospital bed, before walking out of the room. You'd better get some rest, Naruto-kun. Kurama whispered, your training begins when you recover. October 6th, Naruto's age, 6. Naruto will be leaving the orphanage today. In his eyes, a pair of blue, soulless orbs, I saw the eyes of Orochimaru, except this time. It isn't someone who was born a prodigy. Instead, it's someone who became a prodigy through his hard work. Someone whose talents lie in his incapability to give up. He now knows of his father and swore to become better than him. There is simply no longer a reason for this report to continue existing. And I will see to it that it does not. Hiruzen put down his pen, before closing the report. The old Hokage stood up, walking towards the lit-up fireplace before throwing the report into it, watching as it gradually burnt into embers and broke apart. Hiruzen sighed, he knew the boy's life will be hard from now on. The old man swore to Kami, if he ever discovered who let slip the boy's Jinchuriki status to the common public, he would ensure that the rascal burns in hell. Naruto, age 10, Academy. Get out. The academy teacher screamed at Naruto, who promptly stood up and began to pace towards the door. Naruto walked out of the academy classroom, closing the door behind him before walking away. Wait, you were right, weren't you? Kurama asked. Yeah, I was. Naruto mentally replied, these can't bear seeing me being right, so this happens. That's my conclusion, at least. So, what are your plans for today? Kurama questioned her host, who began to walk towards the academy's door. I'm just getting out of here. Naruto replied, approaching the door. Naruto opened the door, before ducking under a punch, one thrown by an older student. Where do you think you're going, you freak? The bully asked. Naruto didn't reply, continuing to brush by the older boy. Seemingly annoyed by Naruto's nonchalance, the bully threw a right hook towards Naruto with all his might, one which connected with Naruto's face. Without a hint of flinching, Naruto pushed his face against the fist, turning to glare at the bully. Before the bully was able to pull his punch back, Naruto grabbed onto the bully's right thumb, before twisting and breaking it, causing the bully to scream in pain before falling to the ground. Why, you're finished. The bully yelled, fear evident in his stumbling voice. My dad's in the civilian council. He'll have you hung up by your guts. Completely ignoring the older boy's statement, Naruto withdrew a scalpel from his pocket, before slowly walking towards the bully. You know, Naruto murmured with an emotionless tone, you would make an excellent specimen to dissect. That was the final straw for the boy, who passed out in fear. Naruto turned his back, placing his scalpel back into his pocket before walking away. Realistically, you could have taken him as an actual specimen, you know that? Kurama asked, a slight hint of laughter in her voice. Probably. I could have just dissected him right there and then, Naruto replied. Either way, I would rather not have the entirety of the civilian side of the village after my head right now. One boy telling his parents is one thing. A missing boy, now that's a different situation altogether. Smart move. Kurama replied. Anyways, that was an interesting use of the Kagaya clan's ability. Denser, tougher bones always make taking hits easier. Naruto replied, slowly approaching his apartment. Naruto's apartment. Entering the apartment, Naruto placed his bag on the ground, before approaching his work table, which had 2 vials placed on it. This might be a dumb idea. Naruto informed Kurama while placing a set of goggles over his eyes, before pulling on a pair of lab gloves. Correction, this is a dumb idea. Good. At least we agree on that. Kurama muttered. What do you intend to do anyway? I'm going to create a new, stronger acid, Naruto replied. I believe that it will be formed as a solution of both antimony pentafluoride and hydrogen fluoride. I just need to determine how much I need of both to balance the solution. What makes you think that they are compatible? Kurama questioned. What if it just explodes in your face? You could just heal me. Naruto replied. Either that or my incredibly diluted blood would just pull something out of nowhere. Without heeding further warnings, Naruto began to pour 1/3 of a beaker of antimony pentafluoride into a larger beaker, before pouring 2/3 of a beaker of hydrogen fluoride solution into the same large beaker. Naruto began to slowly twirl the mixture with a lab spatula. Suddenly, the beaker cracked and fell apart, before the mixture sparked and slowly caught on fire. That was unexpected. Naruto whispered to Kurama, putting out the fire with a fire extinguisher. I think I'm close to finding it, though. What do you think, Kurama-chan? How many times have I told you? Kurama began to say, clearly flustered by the suffix, not to call me that. Don't lie. Naruto murmured with a rare smirk, you like that nickname. Without giving time for Kurama to respond, Naruto walked back to the table, pulling another large beaker from under the table. Now then, Naruto thought, what happens if I put in equal amounts of both? Following his thoughts exactly, Naruto placed 1/3 of a beaker each of both compounds into the larger beaker, before mixing them with the lab spatula. Nothing seems to be happening yet. Naruto murmured, before turning around towards another table. Guess I'll take a look at my other project first. Your anesthetic project? Kurama asked. What do you need that for? My mother did tell us that the world is dangerous. Naruto replied, mentally recalling his meeting with Kushina. Enemy shinobi are much easier to deal with once they are unconscious. It could also help me perform surgeries in the future if need be. Surgeries? Kurama asked, Didn't know you wanted to be a medic. I don't necessarily want to cure diseases. Naruto replied, but I do intend to remove poisons and toxins. Fascinating. Kurama muttered. Before Naruto was able to approach his other work table, a sizzling noise could be heard. Carefully, Naruto turned to his first work table, where he witnessed an extraordinary sight. The solution is gone. Naruto muttered. Did it dissolve? Evaporate? Is that why it sizzled? Naruto-kun. Kurama informed. Look closer at the beaker please. Naruto peered down from atop the beaker, before noticing what he had failed to notice seconds prior. Naruto found himself looking at a hole at the bottom of the beaker, one which extended through his work table. Did it dissolve all the way through? Naruto said aloud. Let's hope that no one lives downstairs. Kurama chuckled. Yup. Naruto replied, walking towards the fireplace with his notes. We don't need this anymore. Naruto stated, before tossing the notes into the blaze. Actually, it would be more appropriate to say that we don't need anyone else finding them. Isn't that right, Inu? As if on cue, a member of the Anbu wearing a fox-like mask landed on the ground before Naruto. You know my name. I don't get why you still insist on calling me Inu. Inu asked, how have you been, Naruto? Quite all right, Inu, Naruto replied. As for why I call you Inu, it would be rather counterproductive to call an Anbu by his real name when he's on duty, wouldn't it? It would, Inu replied. Anyways, the Hokage wants to check up on you. It is your 10th birthday after all. Really? Naruto remarked. I forgot. I'll be at his office in a second, I just need to clean this up first. No need for that, Hiruzen suddenly stated. I'm already here. Hiruzen finished, before walking up behind Inu and Naruto, who both knelt before the third Hokage. Now, no need for formalities here. We're in a private place, after all. Naruto and Inu stood up, before Inu flickered away, leaving Naruto and Hiruzen alone. Happy birthday, Naruto, Hiruzen stated, pulling a scroll from his back. Take this as my gift. You could say that. It is a jutsu most befitting of you. Multi-shadow clone jutsu? Naruto asked, opening the scroll. Fascinating. Kurama muttered. Based on the information in the scroll, it's an S-rank technique, and you probably could perform it. S-ranked? Naruto asked. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, are you sure I can use it? Of course, Naruto, Hiruzen replied. With the Kyuubi contained within yourself, you possess chakra reserves which many deem unnaturally large. You said you had issues performing the normal clone jutsu, didn't you? I did, but, Naruto began to say. Then you should find this version perfect for you, Hiruzen replied, before walking towards the work table, noticing the large hole that extended into the floor of Naruto's apartment. A successful acid experiment, I assume. You could say that. Naruto replied. Actually, may I ask a favor? Of course, Hiruzen replied. Another specimen to dissect. Precisely, Naruto replied, pulling his notebook from his table. Could I ask for a snake? Hiruzen paused for a moment. Are you sure? Hiruzen asked. Well, it's either that or a human specimen. But I assume the latter's off limits. Hiruzen sighed, before giving his answer. If you want a snake, rush to training ground 44 before the sun sets. In that forest lives the only person from which you can get a snake from in the entirety of Konoha. Alright, thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto thanked, before running out the door, leaving Hiruzen in his room. He sure does have his mother's enthusiasm. Hiruzen muttered, before leaving Naruto's apartment. Training ground 44. So this is the place. Naruto muttered, walking up to the gates of the large forest. I remember this place from when I was contained inside Kushina-chan. Kurama revealed. You're gonna love this place, Naruto-kun. Really? What's inside? Naruto asked. Well, from what I remember. Kurama recalled. Let's just say. You can probably dissect all the creatures here and discover something new every time. In that case, Let's hope this person Hokage-sama told me to look for is as interesting as the forest itself, Naruto replied, before walking into the forest. Behind Naruto's back, however, 4 genin stepped out of the shadows. So this is where the demon is. The first one said. Be quiet. A second genin stated, we don't want no one hearing us. With the two of you being so loud. A third genin stated, I would be surprised if no one heard us. Would you all just shut up? A fourth one yelled, someone's going to hear us at this point. Well, you sure are right about that one. Naruto suddenly stated, appearing behind the 4. The plan. The first genin yelled, throwing a punch, one which Naruto ducked under with ease. Quite fast for a demon, aren't you? The second genin asked, throwing a kick which Naruto dodged with similar ease. Naruto ducked under an elbow strike, before backflipping over the second genin. What's wrong? The third genin asked, successfully landing a punch onto Naruto's face, one which the blonde shrugged off, cat got your tongue. What should I do, Kurama? Naruto thought. Hang on, Naruto-kun. Kurama yelled, let's see what else your blood contains. With this moment of distraction, Naruto failed to notice a kunai whizzing past his face, only managing to notice the explosive tag tied to it. Without much time to dodge, Naruto covered his face with his arms, before the tag combusted and exploded completely, sending Naruto flying into a tree, parts of his clothing torn from the blast. Come on now, the fourth genin muttered, you showed so much bravado towards my little brother earlier. I do hope you have some more to show. So it's that jackass, Naruto thought, picking himself off, with his eyes completely shut. And why the hell are my eyes so irritated? Kurama-chan, you there? So this is part of your blood. Unexpected. Kurama murmured, a slight hint of irritation in her voice. Kurama-chan, what are you talking about? Naruto thought, opening his eyes. Naruto stood up, but something was off. The 4 genin were still there, no doubt, but they seemed to move in a sort of slow motion. With no time to contemplate, Naruto leapt back into action, perfectly grabbing onto the wrist of the second genin before throwing him over his shoulder. Okay, how did I do that? Naruto thought, dodging a punch from the third genin. Think for yourself, Naruto-kun, Kurama replied, which bloodline ability allows for the prediction of actions as well as the slowing down of vision. Well, Naruto began to think, before having to dodge a kick from the fourth genin. Sit still, demon, the fourth genin yelled. As if mocking his opponent, Naruto stopped in front of the fourth genin, before landing a devastating headbutt onto the nose of his opponent, knocking him out. Standing back up, Naruto sent a cold glare towards the 2 remaining genin, who seemed to notice something. Impossible. The first genin muttered. It can't be. The third genin yelled, your clan was murdered 3 years ago. That's rather subjective, isn't it? Naruto finally stated, before catching a kunai from the first genin. Without a moment's hesitation, Naruto flung the kunai into the chest of the third genin, the blade lodging itself deep into the neck of the genin. The first genin rushed over to the third genin's side, before placing his fingers over the kunai. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Naruto stated, that kunai's keeping him alive. Without it, he would bleed out within seconds. Why you monster? The remaining genin yelled, we have parents in the civilian council. Blah, 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 and then the civilian council's gonna hang me by my guts, aren't they? Naruto asked, it would be an effective threat if I haven't heard it so many times before. Enraged, the remaining genin charged towards Naruto with the crudeness of an untrained barbarian. Unfazed by this, Naruto stood up, before landing a right cross onto the nose of the genin, breaking it in its entirety, knocking him out. Okay, what the hell is going on? Naruto asked himself, walking towards a pond, before staring into it. Staring back at Naruto was not his pair of regular, soulless, blue orbs, but a set of scarlet-red pupils, each with a single tomo within them. Well, can't say I saw that one coming. Your blood sure is diverse, Naruto-kun. Kurama murmured. Could you turn them off? Naruto requested. Of course. Kurama replied. Seconds later, Naruto's eyes reverted from the blazing pair of Sharingan back into his regular pair of blue orbs. What is going on here? Came a new voice. Naruto turned around, only to come face to face with what appeared to be a Chunin. Naruto stood up, as the Chunin looked around, before withdrawing a kunai. You demon, the Chunin declared, how dare you? Before the Chunin was able to do anything, a snake emerged from the shadows, before biting the Chunin in the neck, eliciting a scream of agony from the Chunin. Naruto turned towards the snake, attempting to locate the source of the snake. Gradually, Naruto felt the snake slowly coming out of the light, before the source itself emerged from the darkness, the sleeve of a trenchcoat. How dare him? A female voice asked. How dare you? How dare you enter my grounds before prior request? Slowly, the source of the voice emerged from the shadows herself, revealing a young woman with purple hair tied into a pineapple-like shape, one wearing a tan trenchcoat with mesh armor underneath, the trenchcoat barely covering her stunning figure underneath. Most defining to Naruto, she had a snake fang pendant tied around her neck. The woman flicked her wrist, before withdrawing the snake. You're not off the hook either, kid, the woman stated. I'll just deal with this first, so stay put. Shit, Naruto thought, something tells me this is the woman we're looking for. But I don't think she likes visitors. Her form of dress is interesting, to say the least, Kurama replied. Get lost, snake whore. The Chunin yelled, this is between me and the demon. It's fine, I'll end both the demon and the snake whore at the same time. The Chunin rushed at the woman, who flickered out of view. The Chunin looked around in confusion, before feeling a sharp jolt of pain in his shoulder. The Chunin turned around, only to see a kunai stuck into his right shoulder. You seem decent, the woman stated, suddenly appearing next to Naruto. Nice to meet you, kid. The name's Anko Mitarashi. Don't mock me. The Chunin yelled, throwing a kunai at newly identified Anko, who caught the kunai with ease. Nice kunai, Anko stated, ripping off the explosive tag tied to the kunai. I'll borrow this. Anko tore the explosive tag apart, rendering it completely useless. The Chunin stared, awestruck at Anko's lack of pressure. Suddenly, he felt a stinging pain in his leg. The Chunin looked down to his feet, noticing a kunai plunged into his ankle. The Chunin glared at Anko, before running towards Anko. Halfway into his run, however, the Chunin collapsed to the ground, completely lifeless. Did you know? Anko asked Naruto. The Oxyuranus microlepidotus is known to be one of the most venomous species of snakes in the world. So, tell me why you're here, kid, before it sinks its fangs into your flesh. Well, I was wondering if I could have a snake. Naruto asked. A snake? Anko asked in confusion. You're a kid. What do you need a snake for? To dissect. Naruto replied. And what if I don't give one to you? Anko asked. Hell, I don't even know your name. Oh wait, I forgot to start with my name. Naruto thought, mentally facepalming. I should attend a speaking class or something. A priority. Kurama muttered. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto replied, and Hokage-sama told me I could get a snake from you. Anything more specific? Anko asked. You want me to just speak my mind? Naruto mentally asked Kurama. Go for it. Kurama replied with a cheeky smirk. This should be fun. Well, I think you've got beautiful hair, a gorgeous face, a stunning figure, Naruto began to say, an in-depth understanding about snakes, as well as intensely powerful shinobi skills. Anko stared in confusion, slipping deep into her thoughts. This kid, is he just that dense? Or does he not know how to interact? Either way, he is kinda cute. How about this, Naruto-kun? Anko offered, I'll give you an infinite supply of different snakes. In exchange, you seem to need to learn how to talk to people. So you come here every week, how about it? Anko asked, sticking out a hand. Truthfully, I just wanna see this kid, he's strangely endearing in a way. And hell, with how things might progress. Who knows what lies ahead for us? I don't really like talking, but sure. Naruto accepted, shaking Anko's hand. I'll come down every week. Now, I'll give you a snake tomorrow, Anko replied, it's kinda late now. So you better head home. Alright, goodbye, Naruto replied, running off. Be honest, Naruto-kun, Kurama teased, you like her, don't you? Maybe, Naruto replied, slowly approaching his apartment. Naruto, age, 14. It was early in the morning, 4 in the morning to be exact when Naruto arrived at the Forest of Death. Attempting to sneak in subtly through Anko's window, Naruto was quickly disappointed upon noticing the noise of a snake hissing. Looking downwards, 2 kunai seemingly launched themselves towards Naruto. The kunai dug themselves into the wall which Naruto had clung to before Anko came out of the shadows, a snake wrapped around her shoulders. What the? Anko muttered, walking towards the wall, taking note of the lack of any blood. Those kunai would have at least grazed him. Or even pinned him to the wall. Even then, blood would have been left behind as residue. You would be surprised at how much people can change in 2 years. Anko-chan, Naruto replied, appearing next to Anko, who immediately trapped the blonde in a tight hug. Sorry for dropping out for 2 years. Sorry, Anko asked, pulling away from the blonde, you should be. We went from seeing each other daily to not seeing each other for 2 years. Where have you been? That's considerably simple to explain, Naruto assured, you remember Kurama-chan, right? Stop calling me that, Kurama protested. I've done it for 4 years and I will continue to do it. Naruto mentally remarked, annoying Kurama. What did she do this time? Anko asked in a drawn-out tone as if expecting the blonde's reply. To put it simply, Naruto began to say, 2 years ago, Naruto-kun, wake up. Kurama yelled, forcing Naruto to reluctantly open his eyes. Well, I am beginning your training today. How long is this training going to last? Naruto asked. Well, considering how little emphasis you've placed into ninjutsu, taijutsu, or genjutsu. It's probably going to take 2 years, Kurama analyzed, to which Naruto slightly frowned. Don't give me that look, it's for your own good. Well, fair enough, Naruto admitted, both to Kurama and himself in regards to his lack of effort in the conventional ninja arts. You're right, I have been gifted, or cursed, with the perfect set of tools which any shinobi would dream of, yet I remain unrefined, unskilled in the usage of those tools. Now you're starting to understand. Kurama exclaimed. I require this training to ensure that I can properly utilize these tools. Naruto replied, for a fool with a sword is far less dangerous in comparison to a pro with his fists. Do I at least get to continue my research? You will, Kurama assured, get changed, brush your teeth, we're leaving at once. Do I at least get to say goodbye to Anko-chan? Naruto asked. Does she not mind that suffix like I do? Kurama asked. Well, no, Naruto replied, she calls it cute. I don't get why. Kurama smiled. Naruto still had much to learn, especially when it came to social interactions. Kurama sighed. Naruto-kun, you will not be able to do so, unfortunately. We are to leave at once. Naruto didn't react, turning to his apartment's bathroom. Fine, give me a few minutes. Present day. I see. Anko replied, what did this training entail? Training is a strong term. Naruto stated, torture seems rather weak right now. Well then, I assume you have no issue showing me what you had learned. Anko requested. What? Naruto asked, only to be kicked through the door, landing onto the soft grass of the Forest of Death. Oh, so that's what she meant. Anko landed in front of Naruto, before pulling out a kunai. Ready? Anko asked. Whenever you are. Naruto replied, outstretching his right hand, facing his palm outwards while placing his right palm over his right elbow, both of which were close to his face, with both his legs slightly bent. Just so you know, I do not intend on losing. Real romantic. Genius, Kurama mocked. Now's not the time, Naruto replied. If I go in full of bravado, she may be intimidated. Less talk, more work, Anko stated, before dashing towards Naruto. Want a wager? If I win, you come to live with me from now on. If I lose, I get to take you on a date, Naruto finished, dashing towards Anko. Win-win for me then, Anko thought, withdrawing a kunai from her sleeve, before flinging it towards Naruto, fully expecting him to dodge it. Surprisingly, Naruto didn't flinch, earning a slash on his cheek. Anko stopped her dash, confused as to Naruto's approach. Naruto touched his wound, standing still as if he was working something out. Anko walked forwards, pulling out another kunai. What are you doing? Anko asked, before throwing her second kunai at Naruto. Mere milliseconds before the kunai was able to rip itself into Naruto's face, the blonde lifted his arm, before grabbing the kunai by its handle, stopping it mere millimeters from his face, shocking Anko. How the heck? Anko began to ask, only to be cut off by Naruto. We're currently about 2 meters apart, Naruto began to explain, examining the kunai. It took your kunai about 6 seconds to cut me in the last exchange. Assuming that your kunai doesn't decelerate in any way, your kunai should be traveling at a velocity of a meter per second, giving me about 5 seconds to react to your kunai, 4 if I intend to pull that stunt. As Naruto was distracted by his explanation, multiple snakes launched themselves towards Naruto, wrapping around the blonde and binding him in place, seemingly immobilizing him. I don't even wanna know how you did that so quickly, Anko stated, as she walked towards the bound Naruto. But seeing as you lost, I don't suppose you've forgotten the terms. I wouldn't be so sure, Naruto stated, appearing suddenly behind Anko, pressing a kunai to her neck. Anko grit her teeth at first, before dispelling the snakes out of her sleeve and raising both her arms, as Naruto slowly pulled back his kunai. Alright, you win, Anko congratulated with a smile. Just name the day, time, and place. And you can bet Yori'll be there. How about later? Naruto asked. I'll need to attend the graduation thing first, although those council shitheads probably won't like me passing. Anko sighed, lightly clenching her fist. If you fail, I swear, I'll burn that damned council building to the ground. Relax, Naruto replied, turning to leave. I will not fail. I would rather die in a blaze of fire than bow to the heel of those damned civilian counselors. Naruto finished, before leaving for the academy. Jumping across the tops of several trees, Naruto didn't miss the strange silence presence in Kurama. Anything the matter, Kurama-chan? Naruto asked, slightly concerned. I'm alright, Kurama replied. Strange. She didn't get annoyed at me calling her Kurama-chan. Naruto mentally noted. You know I can read your thoughts, right? Kurama asked. Then you should understand why I wanted to ask you. Naruto replied. Naruto-kun, I'm fine, Kurama assured. Really, I'm fine. Are you sure though? Naruto asked for confirmation. Kurama pouted. Of course I'm fine. Stop worrying so much about me, you'll end up with a head full of gray hair. Kurama teased. Naruto-kun, I'll always be fine, no need to worry. Kurama stated, her tone slightly different from her normal one. Alright then, Naruto stated, approaching the academy. Let's ace this test. Inside the academy, Naruto walked into the classroom, with most of his classmates seemingly surprised by the change in his attire. In stark contrast to his usual orange jumpsuit, Naruto now donned a black trenchcoat, a pair of goggles on his head, intangible mesh armor, Anbu-styled pants, a pair of black combat boots, as well as several small pouches around his waist. Iruka placed his fingers on his temple. Naruto, you're late, Iruka stated, please get seated so we can begin the first test. Naruto did not reply, only sparing a glance to Iruka before taking his seat next to one Sasuke Uchiha, who eyed him up and down. What's with the new outfit, Uzuratonkachi? Sasuke asked, only for Naruto to not answer. Did you not hear me? Naruto shook his head, before lifting a finger, signaling for Sasuke to wait. Is this the same Naruto I know? Sasuke asked himself, before turning back towards the board. Whatever, he should still be that kid who was decent in science and nothing else. No big threat to me. Iruka stepped forward, Mizuki by his side. We're about to begin the tests. Iruka announced, handing out papers with Mizuki to every student present. Write your name, the date today, and begin answering the questions. You all have an hour to complete it, good luck. Naruto lifted his pencil, before glancing through the test itself, quickly realizing how much he had overestimated the difficulty of the written test. Shaking his head slightly, Naruto began to fill in the blanks, intentionally getting a few questions wrong to not make it seem as though he had been cheating. An hour later, Iruka instructed the class to cease their answering, before Mizuki walk around and collect the papers. Skimming through the blonde's paper, Mizuki's ever-growing scowl had not gone unnoticed by Naruto, even less so by Kurama. Do not trust that man, Kurama stated with a scowl of her own, even in the direst of situations. I do not intend to, Naruto mentally replied. Mizuki plopped the stack of papers on the table before Iruka opened the door. All right class, for the next test, Iruka began to say, please make your way to the roof so we may commence the next 2 tests at once. Finishing his statement, Iruka left the room, before the students all piled out of the classroom. Rooftop. Reaching the rooftops, the students all found themselves facing rows of training dummies. All right, class, Mizuki began to announce, this will be an accuracy test. You will all individually throw 3 kunai, one at a time, at your assigned training dummies and will be scored based on the parts you hit. Fascinating, Naruto thought, analyzing the situation. They all have a constant range between the target and the thrower. I can see where this is going. Kurama thought. The first student went ahead, throwing all 3 of his kunai in rapid succession, hitting 2 in the dummy's chest and missing 1 completely. The range is about 15 meters. Naruto analyzed. The second student went forward, throwing all 3 of his kunai in slower succession, hitting 1 in the dummy's left leg and the other 2 in the dummy's torso. It takes approximately 10 seconds for a kunai to reach. Naruto analyzed. Half an hour later, the raven-haired Hinata walked up to the starting position, throwing all 3 of her kunai one at a time, hitting the dummy's head with 1 and hitting the dummy's torso with the other 2. Assuming it does not decelerate. Naruto rationalized, I would need to throw my kunai at a constant velocity of 20 meters a second, taking account of the light breeze in the air. It also has to be from an angle of 45 degrees. Lastly, Naruto Uzumaki, Mizuki announced, a small smirk forming across his face. Naruto shrugged, before walking towards the starting position, feeling the kunai in his hands getting lighter every second that passed. Within a blink of an eye, Naruto threw all 3 of his kunai at once, successfully hitting the dummy's head with all 3, causing Iruka to gape in confusion and Mizuki to fume in slight anger. Unexpected. That's for sure, Mizuki thought, fuming at the blonde's ease of passing. Next up, Mizuki announced, it's time for the taijutsu test. Iruka pointed to a square drawn on the ground. This is where combatants will be fighting. Any inch of the body that exits the square will be counted as an out of bounds for that contestant. First up, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. Mizuki announced, his wicked gleam not going unnoticed by Naruto. Naruto walked to the center of the square, as Sasuke did the same. Both combatants performed the seal of confrontation before slipping into their respective stances, Sasuke slipping into his family's stance, while Naruto assumed the stance he did against Anko. Get him, Sasuke, Ino yelled. Make him know his place. Sakura added on. Sasuke smirked, clearly knowing that Naruto was not in the audience's favor. You sure you don't want to give up now? Sasuke mocked, attempting to agitate Naruto. On the contrary, Naruto replied, I did prepare for this. So I might as well continue. Not knowing the meaning of Naruto's statement, Sasuke dashed towards Naruto, before throwing a punch, one which Naruto caught with ease. Using the Uchiha's momentum against himself, Naruto tossed the Uchiha over his shoulder and out of the square, deeming him officially out of bounds. Not wanting to be yelled at by the hordes of fangirls for his apparent rudeness, Naruto made sure to help the Uchiha up, who had been as confused as everyone else watching. Sorry about that, Naruto began to say, I got lucky. Sasuke looked on, stunned by Naruto's humbleness. You didn't whatever. Sasuke attempted to reply, before giving up and offering to perform the seal of reconciliation, which Naruto accepted. He doesn't need to know. Naruto thought, but I have to say. He isn't the douche I expected him to be. For once. Kurama noted, the Uchiha do have a chance of changing. Classroom after the taijutsu test. Iruka stood at the front of the class, as Mizuki stood in the corner, fuming at his failed attempts of sabotaging Naruto's exams. Alright, class, Iruka began to say, for the final test, I will be calling each of you up to the front of the class, where you will all have to perform the 3 basic ninjutsu techniques, the substitution technique, the transformation technique, and the clone technique. First off, Naruto Uzumaki. Mizuki declared, knowing full well that this was his final chance of embarrassing the blonde. Shrugging slightly, Naruto walked to the front of the class, before Iruka threw a whiteboard duster at him. Seconds before the object made contact with his face, Naruto vanished from sight, leaving a mere eraser in his place, himself appearing on the desk. Very good, Iruka stated. Now, the transformation technique. Nodding, Naruto placed his hands together, before transforming into a pitch-perfect clone of Iruka, complete with the scar and all. Not only was his appearance on point, but Naruto also succeeded in perfectly imitating the scarred teacher's voice as well. Impressive, Iruka acknowledged. Now, the clone technique. Without further thinking, Naruto formed a cross with his hands. Wait, Naruto-kun, Kurama suddenly yelled, that's the wrong. This attempted warning would go on to fall on deaf ears for Naruto, as clouds of white smoke appeared before quickly fading, leaving 3 perfect clones of Naruto in their place, shocking everyone present. Clone technique. Kurama finished, face palming. Oops, Naruto thought. Incredible, Iruka stammered, shocked at the blonde's display, before handing Naruto a blue Hite 8. There is simply nothing more that I could say. You have truly exceeded my expectations in every way, and I am very proud to call you my student. There is simply nothing more I could teach you. So, go be a shinobi that will make us all proud. Naruto smiled back at Iruka, receiving the headband before leaving. Damn it, Mizuki thought, full of rage for his failure to sabotage Naruto's exam. Time for plan B then. Anko's home, evening. So, Anko began to say seductively with a sultry smile, you are a shinobi now, huh? I sure am, Naruto replied, lifting his goggles to reveal his Hite 8. This color of the headband is, though. It is, Anko replied, but hey, you ready for our date? I am, Naruto replied, taking Anko's hand, let's go. With the mood of the occasion, Naruto missed the reaction of Kurama, who had a slightly sour look on her face. The next day, Naruto walked into the academy, as all of his contemporaries had done minutes prior. Completely ignoring the several stares sent his way, Naruto casually approached an isolated seat at the back of the class, before sitting down. Looking around to ensure no one was peeping on him, Naruto opened a notebook, before picking up a pencil. Naruto pressed the lead of the pencil onto a page of the notebook, before breaking the lead of the pencil upon hearing slow footsteps towards him. Looking up, Naruto immediately kept his notebook upon noticing it was Sasuke. You need something? Naruto asked, forming a rare piece of dialogue to anyone, let alone Sasuke. No, Sasuke replied, just wondering if you would be interested in a quick spar. Probably not today. I'm afraid, Naruto replied, standing up, I have quite a bit of business to tend to. Sasuke nodded, before taking a seat himself. Naruto shook his head, before sitting down, attempting to process the events that had transpired the day before. Yesterday. Naruto's mindscape. Kurama-chan. Naruto muttered, appearing inside his mindscape. I think we need to talk. No, Naruto-kun, Kurama stated, focus on your date. Tell me the truth, Naruto replied, what's wrong? It's just that. Kurama began to admit, I wish we had a date like this. The one you and Anko-chan are having right now. But, that wouldn't work. Naruto asked, would it? That's the thing. Kurama began to say, for us demons. It's rather normal for us to take on several mates. But those ideals don't apply to humans. I'm sure we can work something out. Naruto assured, walking towards the cage, only for Kurama to turn away from him, a single tear hitting the ground as she did so. It's alright, Naruto-kun. Kurama replied, her voice cracking up slightly, I already acknowledged the fact that I can never have you. Kurama fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as Naruto grabbed onto the bars of her cage. Suddenly, the ground in Naruto's mindscape shook greatly, as the bars slowly disappeared, allowing Naruto to move forward. Placing a hand on her shoulder, Naruto quickly got the attention of Kurama. How did you? Kurama began to say, only for Naruto to lift her to her feet, before cutting her off, claiming her lips with his own. Tears flowed down Kurama's face, as she returned the kiss, holding onto Naruto. Before long, Kurama pulled away from Naruto, looking straight into his eyes. Are you sure this is what you want? Kurama asked, do you not want to consult Anko-chan first? That's not a bad idea. Naruto replied, give me one moment. Real world. Naruto awoke in the real world, only to be met with the sight of him being upside down. So, you finally woke up, Anko murmured, placing Naruto on a chair in her home. Anko-chan, there is someone who wants to have a conversation with you. Naruto explained, give me your hand. Without questioning the sheer absurdity of the situation, Anko outstretched an arm towards Naruto, before Naruto held onto Anko's arm and transported the both of them into his mindscape. Naruto's mindscape. Anko awoke in a puddle, with Naruto already standing over her. It's alright. The first time is often disorientating. Naruto assured, anyways, the person who wants to talk to you. Naruto began to say, before pausing for a bit. Is? Anko asked, only to see a shadow behind Naruto. She's behind me, isn't she? Naruto asked, only to hear Kurama giggling softly. Anko. Meet Kurama, Kurama, meet Anko. It's my pleasure. Kurama acknowledged, bowing before Anko. Anko began to say, scratching the back of her head, I'm not all too great regarding this formal stuff. That's quite alright, Kurama stated with a smile. Naruto-kun has several communication issues himself. Damn, Anko thought, looking at Kurama's figure, she's hot. Being able to read this, Kurama smirked in amusement, one which Naruto shared. Forgot to mention, Kurama began to say again, I can read your thoughts when you're here. But if it means anything, you don't look half bad yourself. Kurama joked, causing Anko to blush slightly. Well, Anko began to say, only to be cut off. I believe it's time for us to discuss the reason you're here. Kurama stated, with Naruto sitting a certain distance away from the two. To put it in simple terms, we both love Naruto-kun. So why don't we share? Anko immediately asked. So I thought we should share, Kurama began, before cutting herself off in confusion. Wait, what? Hehe, Anko smirked, I knew Naruto-kun had another girl in his life. Especially since no one just calls a casual friend by the suffix, chan. What do you think about this, Naruto-kun? Kurama asked, is this what you want? Well, I can't choose between the two of you. Naruto explained, as a social construct, harems could hold several advantages. Harems are a beneficial social structure for the dominant male, as it allows him access to several reproductively available females at a time. Harems protect the females within a particular harem, as dominant males will fiercely ward off potential invaders. Harems also allow bonding and socialization among the female members, which can result in greater control over access to females as determined by the female's preferences. Of course, he gives a scientific explanation. Both women thought, rolling their eyes at the same time, before widening them in realization. Wait, harem, Kurama asked in distress, you want to have several mates? Hee, Anko teased, oh, Naruto-kun. I never knew you liked to experiment that much. Although, seeing your scientific background, I shouldn't be surprised, should I? In fact, Anko walked towards Kurama, before pressing her lips against the other woman, gently caressing Kurama's large S throughout the kiss, completely surprising Naruto. To further add to his surprise, Kurama returned the kiss, performing similar acts to Anko. After a bit of time had passed, Anko pulled away from Kurama. So then, Kurama-chan. Anko asked, I assume this situation can be considered settled. It definitely can, Anko-chan. Kurama replied with a wink, a smile plastered on her face before her expression shifted to a relatively more serious one. Anyways, Naruto-kun, any potential mates will have to be approved by me or Anko-chan, got it? Of course, Naruto promised. We should probably go back to the real world now. Shouldn't we? Yup. See ya later, Kurama-chan. Anko exclaimed before she and Naruto vanished from his mindscape. Real world. Anko awoke next to Naruto, before planting a kiss on the blonde's lips. You never told me you knew someone so kinky. Anko muttered, much to Naruto's amusement. Present day. Naruto shook himself out of his daydream, as Iruka walked up to the front of the classroom. Iruka-sensei, Sakura asked, where's Mizuki-sensei? I have an announcement to make regarding that, Iruka stated. Yesterday, at about 9 p.m., Mizuki was caught attempting to betray the leaf. He had attempted to henge into Naruto, before stealing something of great value to Konoha. Interesting, Naruto spoke out, surprising most of his classmates who have yet to hear Naruto speak at all. I don't recall robbing anyone during that time last night. I was on a date. Just thinking about who would even consider dating Naruto. The one who hasn't spoken before today. Sakura thought, freaks me out. That's the point, Iruka continued to explain, you would have no reason to do that, Naruto. Hence making Mizuki's ruse remarkably unconvincing. That pesky lowlife. Hinata thought, it seems I knew better than to trust him with anything. A snake in every sense of the word. Naruto thought, you were right for me not to trust him. Kurama-chan. Of course. Kurama replied with a sense of pride, since when am I ever wrong? You were wrong in assuming that Anko-chan wouldn't appreciate sharing me with you. Naruto mentally replied, much to Kurama's embarrassment. There was also that time you. Alright, I get it, Kurama yelled, pouting as she did so, I can be wrong sometimes too. Regardless of this, Iruka began to say again, the situation has been dealt with, and Mizuki has been apprehended. Anywho, it is time for me to announce team placements. I'll just explain it simply. 3 genin will be placed onto a team, with a Jonin sensei to guide them until they can mature as shinobi. For Team 10, it'll be comprised of Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi, under the leadership of Asuma Sarutobi. Isn't he the Hokage's son or something? Naruto asked himself. The blonde could have sworn he had heard that name before. Team 8 will consist of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame, with the Jonin sensei of the team being Kurenai Yuhi, Iruka announced, as Hinata turned to Kiba, a cold glare placed onto him with her pupilless eyes. To put this out there now. Hinata said coldly, try anything funny. And I'll be sure to have you hung by your legs. Before that, however, you will die a death most befitting for people like you. Kiba gulped, before backing off slightly. Iruka went on for a bit regarding other teams, before arriving at the final team. Last but not least, Iruka began to say, Team 7 will consist of Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. with the man leading their team being Kakashi Hatake. So, Inu's leading our team. Naruto thought, not being able to shake himself out of his old habit of addressing the silver-haired Anbu. A surprise for sure, but a welcome one. Although, I do expect him to be late to appointments. Yes, Sakura thought with a sense of triumph, I'm in a team with Sasuke-kun. Take that, Ino pig. Sasuke continued to stare into nothingness. Iruka proceeded to leave the room, as the Jonin senseis from each team arrived and called for their teams to leave with them, leaving only 3 people left in the room. A bored Uchiha, an agitated Sakura, and an experimenting Naruto. If you don't mind me asking, Naruto-kun. Kurama whispered, what exactly are you doing? To be quite frank, I'm not that sure myself. Naruto replied, placing the vial containing the incomplete mixture into one of the pockets in his trenchcoat. Anyways, if you don't mind. You up to much? Are you trying to be an idiot? Kurama mocked, rolling her eyes slightly, you can come to visit whenever you want. Alright, Naruto mentally replied, I'm coming in now. Wait, Kurama yelled, let me tie my hair first. Mindscape. Not hearing Kurama's final statement, Naruto entered his mindscape, which had, since his last visit, morphed into a vast forest, with a small hut in the center of the forest. Naruto walked towards the hut, before opening the door, only to be met with the sight of Kurama, whose hair was untied and let loose. Naruto-kun. Kurama exclaimed, startled, I told you I was tying my hair. How would that be a problem? Naruto asked. Well, I look better with my hair tied. Kurama argued. Did you say that, or did I say that one time? Naruto asked. Well, Kurama stammered, I think so. Because I think you look better with your hair untied, Naruto replied, causing Kurama to blush. Really? Kurama stammered. Yup, Naruto replied, walking towards Kurama, before placing a hand on her cheek. May I think we're past that stage, Naruto-kun. Kurama replied. Fair enough, Naruto stated with a chuckle, before pulling himself in to kiss Kurama on the lips, with Kurama herself eagerly returning the kiss. After a fair bit of time had passed, Naruto and Kurama pulled away from each other, with a long strand of saliva forming a bridge between their lips, much to the amusement of the both of them. You're getting better at that, Kurama remarked. That's to be expected, considering Anko-chan seems to require a kiss every few minutes. Naruto joked. I should probably leave now. I feel Inu's chakra approaching. Don't miss me too much, Kurama-chan. Really? Kurama mocked. Shouldn't I be the one to say that? Hey. Naruto chuckled, see ya later. Real world. Naruto looked up from his daze, as the doorknob began to twitch. Seconds later, the door flung open, before Kakashi stepped inside. Kakashi turned towards the 3 genin, his only visible eye bearing no apparent emotion. First impressions. Kakashi muttered, you're all rather boring. Meet me on the roof. Finishing his only statement, Kakashi flickered away in a swirl of leaves, before Naruto and his future teammates were prompted to stand up and leave the classroom. Should I? Naruto mentally asked. If you wanted to, you could, Kurama replied, is there any reason to do so? Fair enough, Naruto replied, before walking out of the room. Rooftop. On the rooftop, Naruto sat right side of the steps, while Sasuke sat on the left, with Sakura sitting next to him. Kakashi walked towards the 3. First off, let's introduce ourselves, Kakashi requested, only to continue upon seeing the confusion on the faces of the 3 genin. Well, you know, like your name, your likes, dislikes, dreams. How about you demonstrate first? Kakashi-sensei, Sakura asked. Very well, Kakashi began to say, my name is Kakashi Hatake, as for my likes and dislikes. I don't feel like telling you. My dreams for the future. Never thought about that before. My hobbies are none of your business. Anyways, let's start with you, Haruno. My name is Sakura Haruno, my likes are, Sakura turned to Sasuke, before squealing. I hate I don't know. My dreams. Sakura turned to Sasuke once more, before squealing again, much to her teammates' chagrin. She's loud. That's for sure. Kakashi thought. You're next. Kakashi stated, pointing at Sasuke. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke began to say, I have too many dislikes to list, and I have very little likes. As for my dreams, it is to kill a certain man, and to eventually restore my clan. If only he knew. Naruto thought, considering his fractional Uchiha heritage. Interesting. Kakashi thought, before turning to Naruto, and finally. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto began to say, I like science and biology in particular, I dislike the ignorant and those who abuse their power. My hobbies are not worth sharing at the moment. My dreams. My dream is to free someone particularly important to me. Strange. Kakashi mentally remarked, before turning away from the three. Meet me in training ground 7 at 6 tomorrow morning. Also, I would recommend not eating any breakfast. A full stomach and a hard physical test have been known to make people throw up. Wait, test? Sakura asked. The test you've passed yesterday was just to determine whether or not you guys were good enough to become genin. Kakashi replied as he began to walk away. The test tomorrow will see if you are good enough to hold that title. See you tomorrow morning. Without waiting for the response of the three genin, Kakashi flickered away in a swirl of leaves. Taking this as his cue to leave, Naruto walked backward slowly, confusing his future teammates with his actions. Before Sasuke or Sakura were able to react, Naruto climbed up the fencing surrounding the rooftop, before jumping off. What the? Sakura thought. Did he go mad? Sasuke asked himself. Scratch that. He was always insane. Naruto's apartment. Naruto opened the door to his apartment, before quickly locking it behind him. Placing his trenchcoat on a hanger, Naruto turned towards his bed, contemplating if he should or should not just take a nap. Unfortunately for him, someone else would make that choice for him. Gotcha! Anko exclaimed, tackling Naruto onto his bed. So, how are you? Suddenly, Anko noticed the disappearance of Naruto from underneath her, before she felt something pressing down on her. I'll always wonder how you do that, Naruto-kun, Anko asked, looking up as Naruto placed a hand on her back. You need something, Anko-chan? Naruto asked. Well, Anko began to say, pushing Naruto back underneath her and looking into his eyes, in scientific terms, which you would understand. I'd like to perform the act of copulation and procreation. Anko stated, eliciting a rare blush from Naruto. A tempting offer, Naruto acknowledged, but I would prefer if we did it tomorrow. I have a test the next morning and I need to be in top shape to pass. So, was that a yes? Anko asked, sparkles forming in her eyes. Fine, Naruto replied, kissing Anko on the cheek, I suppose we could. Training ground 7, 9 a.m. Naruto walked into the training ground, only to be met with a very irritated Sakura. Not caring about what his pink-haired comrade thought of him and his conduct, Naruto walked past the girl, before lying against the large trunk of a great oak, further irritating the girl. You're late. Sakura shrieked as Sasuke looked on from afar. No, you're early, Naruto replied. What the hell are you on about? Sakura grabbed Naruto's collar, demanding to know. Before further action could be taken by the pink-haired girl, Naruto sent a cold glare her way, one which immediately sent a chill down her spine. Without further hesitation, Sakura let go of Naruto's collar, before the blonde's facial expressions normalized. I had breakfast before I arrived, Naruto replied, and as you can see, Kakashi-sensei isn't here, is he? He isn't, but, Sakura began to say, only for Naruto to disregard her and continue. Then you should know better than to follow stupid orders, Naruto finished, before pulling a notebook from his pocket and flipping it open. Before long, a cloud of white smoke emerged in the center of the field, before dispersing and leaving Kakashi in its place. Well then, good morning, Kakashi began to say, only to be cut off by Sakura. You're late. Sakura yelled, albeit not as loud as she did when she shrieked at Naruto. Well, you see, I got lost on the path of life. And then there was this black cat crossing the road. And then I had to help an old lady. Kakashi attempted to explain himself. Ing hell, Naruto thought, placing the notebook back into his pocket, that's quite a story. Anyways, Kakashi began to explain again, the idea behind this test is rather simple. Kakashi continued as he pulled 2 bells from the pocket of his Jonin vest. All you 3 have to do is to take these bells from me, and you pass. But aren't there only 2 bells and 3 of us? Sakura asked. Kakashi further brandished the 2 bells. That's the point, it means that one of you will be sent back to the academy. I see. So that's his plan. Single quote. Naruto thought, analyzing the situation deeply. Kakashi-sensei plans to prey on our natural selfishness is stated in psychology, one which details our need to have something limited. Therefore, the only way for all 3 of us to pass is for us to work together. Naruto thought, considering a strategy, that means that, like it or not, I'll need to be giving up a few secrets to pass this test. You 3 have until noon to take these bells from me. Kakashi stated, tying the bells to his belt. Start. Now. Sakura ducked into the bushes, Sasuke leapt to a treetop, Naruto began to slowly walk towards Kakashi while the aptly named silver-haired Jonin merely withdrew an orange book from his pocket. What the? Sakura thought, what is that idiot doing? It's fine, he can get kicked out. And then Sasuke-kun and I can be alone without him here. This might work to my benefit. Sasuke thought, watching the looming battle from afar, I can gauge Naruto's true abilities from this angle. And Kakashi will tire himself out fighting Naruto. Why am I doing this? Naruto asked himself, as he walked right up to Kakashi, who looked up from his book in amazement. How did he get past all those traps I laid? Kakashi thought, you should be hiding right now. Maybe, Naruto replied, but there is one distinct thing that sets me apart from those 2 hiding as we speak. And that is? Kakashi asked with a hint of curiosity in his voice. I don't care if I pass, Naruto stated. Without further warning, Naruto threw a roundhouse kick towards the silver-haired Jonin, shocking Kakashi with his speed, prompting the Jonin to shut his book. While the Jonin had blocked the attack, Naruto did not intend for Kakashi to have any further time to react. Naruto threw a quick jab, landing it in Kakashi's stomach. Before the Jonin could retaliate, Naruto withdrew a self-made smoke bomb from his trenchcoat pocket, before activating it, obscuring Kakashi's vision temporarily. Upon the smoke's dispersion, Naruto vanished from sight. Have to be careful, Kakashi thought, keeping himself on guard. Naruto is nothing like his academy report says. It seems that his scientific knowledge isn't the only thing to fear from him. Sakura remained in the bushes, completely stunned by Naruto's performance against Kakashi. What the heck? Sakura thought, since when could Naruto of all people fight so well? Well, inner Sakura cut in, he did beat Sasuke-kun in the academy test. That was a fluke. Sakura thought back, Naruto himself admitted that. Suit yourself. Inner Sakura replied, fading into the pink-haired girl's subconscious. Right when Sakura expected it least, a hand placed itself on the pink-haired girl's shoulder, startling her. Slowly turning around to see who it was, Sakura was shocked to see Naruto looking right back at her. Look, Naruto began to say, not intending for Sakura to rant on, I know we don't like each other, but we need to pass this exam. Yeah, and, Sakura brushed off, what do you want? Please, just use your head for once, Naruto requested, slightly irking the pink-haired girl, have you ever seen a 2-man team? Seeing Sakura's reluctant agreement on her face, Naruto continued the conversation. Look, I just need your help with Sasuke. Sasuke stepped atop of a tree branch, only for Naruto to pull the last Uchiha back into the tree. What the hell was that for? Sasuke asked, only for Naruto to lift a finger. Look, You're normally easier to talk to than Sakura, so please don't make this too hard for me. Naruto requested a request which Sasuke nodded to in curiosity. Thank this Uchiha isn't like the other Uchiha. You got me there. Kurama replied, this Uchiha doesn't seem to be an arrogant jackass. Anyways, the true point of this test isn't to get a bell. Naruto explained, confusing Sasuke slightly. It's a test of teamwork, why else would Kakashi-sensei try to divide us with the goal of a bell? Sasuke pondered this for a few seconds, before nodding in agreement. Alright then, Naruto, Sasuke replied, calling the blonde by his name for the first time, what's the plan? It's rather simple. Naruto stated, I just need you to launch a joint attack on Kakashi-sensei with me. And hopefully, Sakura provides ranged support before popping out of the bushes herself. Minutes later, looking around, Kakashi attempted to pinpoint the location of the three genin. Suddenly, a kunai came flying out of the bushes, nearly grazing the silver-haired Jonin's vest. Using this distraction, Naruto leapt himself off of a tree branch, launching himself towards Kakashi and throwing a kick, one which the Jonin blocked with ease. Something isn't right here, Kakashi thought, commenting on the blonde's clumsiness. As per his thoughts, a large fireball came flying out of the bushes, originating from Sasuke, threatening to consume Kakashi with its flames. Without having much time to consider his next move, Kakashi flung Naruto into a bush, before jumping out of the way of the fireball. Upon landing back on the ground, Kakashi was immediately forced to block a punch from Sasuke. Just as the silver-haired kunai was about to counter, 3 shuriken came flying out of another bush, cutting Kakashi in his right leg, causing him to wince slightly. This is getting annoying, Kakashi thought in regards to the constant barrage of shuriken and kunai, before noticing Sasuke's sudden disappearance. They seem to be working in sync, however. They're far too organized to be a coincidence. Before any further time was allowed for Kakashi to consider, Naruto reappeared from the bushes, forcing the silver-haired Jonin to contend with the blonde. Suddenly, the unthinkable happened. Naruto's body suddenly faded into smoke, before giving way for Sasuke to throw a jumping kick towards Kakashi. At the same time, Sakura leapt out of the bushes, armed with a kunai. With the smoke which had once been Naruto's body floating behind Kakashi, Naruto suddenly reconstituted himself, before launching himself at Kakashi. Having no time to react with direct action, Kakashi was forced to leap up, allowing Sakura and Sasuke to get a bell each. Well, Kakashi began to say, this test can be considered concluded. Naruto, seeing as you failed to get a bell, you drop the act, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto stated, we know what this test is about. Kakashi chuckled slightly, alright, you got me, this test was about teamwork, which the 3 of you did exceptionally well in. I have to ask, however. Kakashi began to ask, turning to Naruto, what was that technique you used earlier? The one that let you turn into smoke. That one, Naruto asked, that was the Ibari clan's bloodline. Seeing his teammates' confused faces, Naruto turned around, I'll continue to explain tomorrow. I have some stuff to attend to. Before any further questions could be asked, Naruto changed his bodily structure into that of smoke, before floating away. Naruto's apartment. Naruto reconstituted his physical mass in front of the door to his apartment, mentally bracing himself for what he knew was coming. Naruto grabbed onto the doorknob to his door, only for the door to open on its own, leaving Anko in the opening. Giggling slightly, Anko grabbed Naruto, dragging him inside his apartment before closing the door behind the two of them. Entering Naruto's room, Anko tossed the blonde onto his bed, before removing Naruto's trenchcoat and tossing it onto the coat hanger. Well then, Anko teased, placing her fingers over Naruto's upper torso, I hope you seek to honor your promise. Well, here we are. Naruto replied, so I assume we are. That was all the approval Anko needed to follow up on her animalistic instincts. Moving without further hesitation, Anko removed her trenchcoat and her mesh shirt after that, her generously gifted S exposed to the air for Naruto to see. Not exactly knowing what to think of this, Naruto reached out, placing a hand on Anko's left, surprising the snake mistress. "Oh, Naruto," Anko purred, locking the blonde in a kiss before pulling away seconds later. "You're probably the most scientifically knowledgeable person in all the elemental nations. Yet, when it comes to this sort of act, you're just a kid. Am I now?" Naruto asked, placing Anko on her back. "We'll see soon enough." Finishing his statement, Naruto removed Anko's short skirt, before Anko removed the remaining lace pair of panties, leaving her crotch bare for Naruto to witness. To the blonde, a fact had made itself rather apparent. "So, you didn't tell me it was your first time," Naruto murmured, causing Anko to blush slightly. "It's not something usually brought up in conversation," Anko replied, "but yes, it is my first time." Naruto paused to stare at Anko's vagina, considering what course of action he should take, slightly torturing Anko due to the cold breeze that could be felt due to her current state of nudity. Before long, Naruto placed a finger onto Anko's erect oris, causing the purple-haired woman to shudder slightly. Taking this as a sign he did something correctly, Naruto began to repeatedly rub Anko's oris, causing further shuddering from the snake mistress. Suddenly, Naruto slipped a finger into Anko's exposed womanhood, causing her to emit an audible "Ah, F." Anko groaned as Naruto began to repeatedly withdraw and reinsert his index and middle finger into the purple-haired woman's vagina in rapid succession. I'm. Anko placed a hand over her mouth, her eyes half closed as a wave of pleasure overtook her body. Suddenly, Anko experienced a great orgasm, leaving her a shuddering mess on Naruto's bed upon her climax as Naruto brought his face next to hers. "Be careful what you wish for, Anko-chan," Naruto whispered. "I know much more than I am letting on." "I'll hold you to that," Anko replied in between her heavy panting, before pinning Naruto onto his bed. "Now then. I believe it's my turn." Anko smirked, a smirk which quickly faded before shifting to a daze upon her removal of Naruto's boxers. Upon grabbing the hem of his boxers, Anko was rudely, pleasantly surprised by a sudden smacking of Naruto's large member against her cheek. "Holy shit," Anko thought, completely caught off guard by the size of Naruto's. "Not a bad size. Well, I aim to impress," Naruto replied, "most of the time anyway." Anko giggled at the blonde's joke, before placing her lips over the tip of Naruto's member, swirling her tongue over the tip, causing Naruto to groan softly. Seeing this as a sign of sorts, Anko moved her lips downwards over Naruto's large member, causing a majority of her cheeks to be filled by the blonde's. Slowly adjusting to Naruto's size, Anko began to bob her head up and down slowly, before gradually increasing the speed in her movements, causing further groaning from the blonde. "Fair warning," Naruto began to say, "I am almost at my limit." You know what that means. Originally wanting to move her mouth from Naruto's member, Anko was pleasantly surprised when Naruto placed a hand over the back of the purple-haired woman's head, pushing it down to allow the blonde to unload a stream of semen into the back of Anko's throat. Naruto slowly removed his hand, before pulling her away from Anko's mouth, leaving the purple-haired woman in a complete daze. Panting desperately for air, Anko gave Naruto a smirk. "That was quite something, Naruto-kun," Anko remarked. "I do hope there is more to come. Wouldn't you like to find out?" Naruto joked. "You betcha," Anko exclaimed, laying on her back as Naruto positioned his member over her vagina. "Naruto, you want me to be gentle, I assume?" Naruto asked, only to get a confused look from Anko. "Gentle? Hell no, I want you to go rough," Anko yelled. "I was just going to say that. You should just relax. Don't take it as something intense. You'll feel better about it if you're at ease." Taking this as his go-ahead, Naruto kissed the purple-haired woman as he gently slid the full length of his member into Anko's vagina, causing a soft squeal of pain as he claimed the virginity of the purple-haired woman. Slowing down slightly, Naruto began to feel the slight clawing of his back by Anko, who did not look pleased by Naruto's current rhythm. Excuse me, Anko began to mock, this doesn't look very rough, does it ah? Anko was cut off by Naruto's sudden increase of speed and strength, causing the purple-haired woman's legs to go numb as the sound of several loud S flooded the room, ringing through Naruto's biologically enhanced hearing. Before long, Naruto increased his speed slightly more, causing Anko's loud S to turn to screams of pleasure. Naruto-kun. Anko screeched, I'm about to. That's alright, I am reaching my climax as well. Naruto replied. Finish inside me. Anko demanded, locking the blonde's waist in position with a sudden rejuvenation of energy in her legs. Before long, Naruto pumped his hips into hers for one final time, climaxing and unloading streams of semen into the vagina of the purple-haired woman, painting the insides of the Anko's inner vagina white with his cum. With the both of them panting for air, Naruto collapsed atop Anko, placing his face in between of his partner's S, causing her to giggle slightly. We should do that more. Naruto remarked. We are. Anko replied, before pushing Naruto onto his back before straddling up into his lap. You still have some left in you, don't you? Naruto smirked. He could foresee what was about to happen. Naruto laid on his bed, barely able to remain conscious with a sleeping Anko lying.